I am joined by Alan. Hello, Alan.
Hi, Andy.
And I like your background because you have lots of books, and I like books.
I got criticized by somebody in church, or just an observation, that there's some spaces on the bookshelf. He said he never has any spaces. I've just had a sort out, and so there's space to grow, which is quite exciting. Yeah.
Space, yeah, my bookcase is just off the camera, but I love books. I know. I mean, I've written books like they're in audio books and ebooks, and that's great. I still like having something in my hands because there's a smell to the book. You know where the crease marks are. There's a fold to the page. I've read Brother Andrew's book of Open Doors. My word, that has got so many creases and page marks in it, and you don't get that if you start creasing your Kindle reader. Yeah, it don't work.
Doesn't work.
No. So I like the feel of a book. It's good.
Just one book on my thing here. This is a Mark's Gospel Uncover, produced by UCCF, the student movement, in simplified Chinese, and we helped to translate that. There's now lots of free copies available. If anyone wants, we can get them to them. Help you study the Bible in Chinese with your friends. How about that?
That's really good. And if I remember vaguely correctly, isn't it a bigger book because of the language, or am I getting this misplaced with another language?
Not sure. They've done it in a nice, generous size, but it's all Chinese language and it is some studies. So it's not just the gospel, but I think they've deliberately produced something with a bit of a cover on it to give it a bit of lasting power and things.
Lasting power is always good. I have got a few books. I've read Lord of the Rings book, the trilogy many times, and their spine is just shot, but there's something special about it nonetheless, even more so with God's word. So let's just dive into what you're doing today. You just held up a gospel book, but what's your day job today?
Yeah, the title is National Director for Friends International. Friends International is a charity that has about 80 staff workers around the UK in 35 places, really the places where there are most international students. And the aim of the organisation is to reach out and help churches reach out and Christian student groups to reach out to the 1 million international students that come to our shores every year. There's about 700,000 in universities. A lot of them are graduates and sort of important people here for a long time. And it's time to get to know them and help them see that Jesus has a message for them. And we can be welcoming, and we love just getting people into events and helping them see that some people in Britain want to look after them. And the other, actually, probably up to 500,000 are language students. They may come into places like Bournemouth, Canterbury, Cambridge, Oxford, elsewhere, and they're here for a much shorter time. They may be European teenagers. They may be over the summer. So we try to do summer outreaches. And but language and university students is over 1 million. My job is to help that happen. I have a team of directors, and we have a support centre based at All Nations Christian College in Hertfordshire. And we aim to help our staff and the volunteer teams to reach out effectively to international students while they're here.
I never would have thought it was about a 60th of the population in the United Kingdom, give or take. That's international. That's wild.
They're not all here at the same time. When you say 1 million a year, some of them come for a few weeks and go again. So at any one point, it's not a 60th of the population, but you're not far wrong. And we like to keep in touch with them when they go back as well. We have ways of helping international students, especially those who become Christians, to reintegrate into churches and to make adjustments to their lives. And we love keeping in touch. So it's when they're here and when they're back as well.
So I would imagine then, really, the core of that is more of a missions movement.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know, having been, I went to Manchester, I lived in Wolverhampton. It's only it wasn't even a 2 hour drive, and yet it feels like a very different culture. Now you magnify that across a border with a passport, and I felt more comfortable doing certain things I probably would not have done back home because there's a freedom that's quite unique. If you're talking about cross countries, yeah, I mean that's just going to get bigger, isn't it?
Well, there's certainly cultural differences, there's language adjustments, and people come here and they think Britain is a certain type of country. And when they get here, it's much more complex. And we're happy to help them. We want to be welcoming. It's one of the first things that Christians are encouraged to do to people from other places is to welcome people, to show a love for people, a care for people. Christians can offer hospitality as the first mission step. So we say it all starts with a cup of tea. You can have a culturally appropriate hot or cold beverage instead. But we think most people can do that. When you find an international student, you welcome them, you say they're welcome, you ask them something about their place, and you tell them something about your place. So we do a lot of orientation events, we do a lot of guides, walks in the countryside, or let's get to know our city. And it'll include a visit to church and an offer of a Bible study, because a lot of people want to know what Britain's all about. And we can talk about the Christian heritage and the current Christian position for many in Britain. And so it's a lovely thing to be able to be involved in mission. And it's mission in other senses, in that our staff raise their financial partnerships, prayer backers, and alongside local churches. So it's not like there's a salary available necessarily. It's about raising your money and getting people behind you, and then getting involved in mission locally. But it's very much that global and local. Everyone's here. We've got people from fascinating places. We've got people from places where they're not likely to hear about Jesus. And so we are doing global mission to the furthest reaches by welcoming people who've come from all these wonderful places and who may never have heard about Jesus if they didn't meet us on their doorstep and on our doorstep.
Well, this is true. It's slightly personal, actually, in a sense, because I grew up and raised in Wolverhampton. They had a very good language section to the university. My wife from Devon came to Wolverhampton to study French and German, and we got to know her because my church was at that moment in, I suppose, early 90s, mid 90s, very much the place that all the students would go. And it was a very multicultural church. So we had, on any given night, maybe 300 people, but 60 to 80 of those easily could be students. Now, a lot of those were probably British students, but not exclusively.
Arguably, people from Devon are learning the language in Wolverhampton as well.
Well, yeah,
what can we say?
She's still learning how I speak after 30 years. But it's an interesting pressure cooker. I didn't do university. My wife did 2 degrees. So as far as I'm concerned, I get a 1 degree by the we approach. But it is a good time of discovering who you are, away from parents, away from family, away from culture.
Yes.
What does life really look like for me?
Well, for international students coming to the UK, some of them are very highly experienced. They've done a degree somewhere else. They may have traveled. They're very, settled in their international outlook, and they're very able to cope in a British city or wherever they are, and they work very well. But others may be traveling for the first time, and they are away from parents for the first time. They're away from their culture for the first time. Now, we want to help them. I talked to a friend, Duncan Alembe. He's a Kenyan leader of international student ministry, and he said his concern for the Kenyan Christians coming to the UK is that many of them would be easily tempted into the British drinking culture in Freshers Week. And for Christians who've had quite a relatively well-structured background in a Kenyan church, that could be quite a difficulty. So we're here to look after Christians and help them make good choices early on. There's others who may have been told what to believe about God and life and faith, and who see, well, there's other ways of seeing things. So we, as Christians, we can be friendly, and we can help them understand what it is to be a Christian, and what Britain has been formed by lots of different cultural influences, but Christianity has been prominent. So, you might go and visit a cathedral and say, what's that all about? You might go and see all sorts of things around. And I had a friend here from Beijing, and he came and he went to see a Charles Dickens play, Christmas Carol. And he was just interested in British culture. We got to talk about all sorts of things, very interesting stuff about what's different about Britain, and Christianity is part of that. So as Christians, we want to be sharing what it means to be a Christian. I often go back to John's Gospel, chapter 15, verse 15, where Jesus is talking about his disciples. He's not calling them servants. He's calling them friends. And it says, because he shared with them everything that the Father has shared with him. So true friendship is about sharing what it means to be a Christian, what it means, what makes us tick. And so we want to be genuinely friendly at the cup of tea level, and the welcome and the encouraging level. And then, reality is that we want to share what makes us tick, and where we're able to, and appropriately, to share that Jesus has made a difference in our lives and can make a difference in other people's lives is all part of the picture.
I want to explore more about how you are sitting there working for Friends International, but let's go back in time, because we're talking about faith here. So where did Jesus come into you? I guess the question I probably need to ask is, where was your first cup of tea into the gospel?
Yeah, good point. Well, there's some fascinating stuff. I grew up in Somerset, so not Devon, but Somerset. And there were some Christians around us on reflection, but my connection with faith was a fairly sleepy country parish church, and school sort of linked into Christian stuff a bit. But I really met Christians first when I was in a gap year. I was traveling And I managed to meet young Christians having a good time, and I didn't think that was possible up to that point. So it sparked my interest. I was coming back to go to university, so I went to buy a Bible in Bath Abbey. I bought one of those. I've got it, still got it here. This is the Good News version Bible that I bought in Bath Abbey before going up to Newcastle University in 1983. And I said, I'm going to go to university, go to church. I'm going to buy a Bible and learn what it is to be a Christian. I met Christians when I arrived, and I was introduced to a good church in Newcastle, and who are still involved in supporting what I do, which is wonderful. And then I was introduced to the Christian Union. But eventually I worked out, I was desperately trying to read this new Bible and catch up with everybody because they all seemed to know much more than I did. But somebody pointed out to me, it's not just about the learning, is it? It's not about learning how to be a Christian. It's personal, it's faith, it's repentance, and it's changing your life and turning around and addressing yourself to God personally and admitting you got stuff wrong. So that was the point for me in my first term at university. I was again invited in with the friendship, but also there was content. It wasn't just all cups of tea. It was Bible study and what does this mean for our lives? And it took me a little while, but this journey then for what's now 42 years is about trying to line my life up more with what I see in the Bible and what I learned from other Christians and learn about life generally. So yeah, the first cup of tea was university early on when I was 19.
I find it fascinating how many folk I've spoken to who say cup of tea matters, but it's. I met some Christians and they were having fun, or I met some Christians and there was some life, and it's always the same thing that you said, and it sort of surprised me, or I wasn't expecting that, or it's a bit of a shock or something, and I just think we have the greatest message on earth. How are we not spending every second of our lives beaming and smiling? Now I know it's not simple as that, but actually in some ways it probably should be.
I think very much, and that was the surprise to me because Christianity had come across as dull and irrelevant, and so I need to be shocked out of that. But it's the fun and the engagement, the real people. But then it's the content, and it's this is challenging as well, isn't it? It's not just all the happy clappy wander into a lovely life. It's God's got something really challenging and important to say into my life, and that came together at that point in November 1983 when I became a Christian.
I love lots of the story of that. My wife actually was born in Weston-super-Mare, which is Avon or Somerset, as was. So yes, not very far away. And she's still learning to speak my language, but that's part of life's discovery. And one of the things I enjoyed at school, I did Christian theology A level, so 16 to 18 years old, is the cooking pot of all these different people with opinions that by 16 to 18, definitely 18, 21, you're already forming who you are, what you believe, and why you want to believe that. But I found just the conversations on their own with people who weren't all Christians. I mean, it was a CV secondary school, Catholic school, combined A level. So you've got some Methodists and Baptists and some Christians. There's a Muslim guy, and there were different people in there. But just the conversations alone was enough for me to think, I know what I think. Okay, why do I think I know that?
And I think we are, there's things we assume. There's many of us have got really good parenting that helps us. Others haven't. So sometimes we stick with what we know until we're able to challenge and develop our own view. Others, the shocks come at different times. There's a number of us who are going to say, I went along to a Sunday school, and I had a friend here, a very experienced mission leader in Reading, where I live now, who was trying to keep himself out of trouble. And somebody came along and said, "What are you doing, Sonny?" He said, "Nothing, nothing, nothing." And he was trying to say, "Oh, well, I'm not about to burgle that shop or anything." And the guy said, "Well, come along to our table tennis club." And that was his first introduction to Christian faith, because there were Christians running the table tennis club. So there's all sorts of ways. Sometimes it's a shock and a move. For me, it was a surprise. I'd seen something in some young Christians that I did not expect to see, and that piqued my interest. There were then further steps of me sorting my life out and God sorting my life out, which continue to this day. But it was, others I think are much more naturally in, but we all have some sort of story there, don't we?
What I remember very clearly, I mean, it was my church that I grew up in. I wasn't going to there. This is where I'd grown up. And all these students were there 60 to 80 or so every week. And I remember there was a real rich diversity of people already. I mean, we had, Caribbean and West Jamaicans, and there was so many in the church. And then we had these students from other parts of the UK and the world. And it was brilliant every week just to see a slice of heaven from my perspective,
Yeah.
because different colors of skin, different languages, different dialects. And it was like we're all here for one purpose, which is to worship God. And it was beautiful. But what I do remember most vividly, and I used to benefit from this as someone in my, 18-year-old, was the food on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't remember many Sundays when, if you had nothing to eat, it wouldn't matter. Someone would invite you somewhere, and that meal and the students there were okay. It was organized. Let's invite these students here, and there are people who would do that. But it was the food. It was a relaxed chat, and it was such formative stuff, even for me. And I wasn't a student coming in.
Well, I think that's lovely, isn't it? And you're right about the food, but there's also other contexts where, if you ask, why is there a Korean and an American and a Nigerian all in the same room, and they're men and women, and they're older and younger, and all sorts of other differences? Why is it that there's a group together, and
Mm.
you wouldn't know why they're all naturally all together, except probably that they're Christians? I know a lot of us work in a lot more international context now, but very often you can find the Christian gathering is more diverse, more wonderful, like you say, a taste of heaven, because it's people getting on well together that you wouldn't naturally think necessarily would come across each other or do stuff together. So I think the Christian community and churches when they meet are really important. And that's something about us for Friends International with international student groups, is we will have, for example, and I could quote the case, shortly after certain things happened in the last few years, a Ukrainian and a Russian student meeting together and showing how they can get on well together.
Wow.
And in other places, in other really difficult global situations, you find that Christians are bringing people together and showing that we can get over some of these, yeah, very difficult, otherwise very difficult situations.
Which is where I suppose having mature hands around. I helped at the CU in Wolverhampton, which was quite big. I went to answer some questions on a panel one night and or guide them a little bit because I was in the church, and it was really good to be able to help people establish healthy ways of discovering who they are, I guess.
Mm.
I mean, you talk about Freshers Week is, perhaps a particular issue for Kenyan students. There's always going to be that weakness, but that's where having a, really good mixed broad people, we
Yeah.
understand that, okay, that culture is going to come here. This is their weakness. May not affect this other group from, I don't know, France or something. They've got a different problem to try and face and overcome. But having supportive Christians with a bit of maturity is so critical.
Well, yeah, and there's different way of doing student ministry, particularly ours is about international students. So some groups will really do well on campus, and it's the undergraduates talking with the undergraduates. You're there with your peers. They can see the absolute relevance of somebody else like me is a Christian and is going to church. I could go along too and study the Bible, that sort of thing. So there's stuff on campus. There's others who are really good at helping churches do international student outreach and general student outreach. For us, it could be church-based or campus based. But the thing for us is that most international students are doing master's degrees or above, PhDs. So, for example, 70% of the postgraduate students in Oxford are international. It's a really high percentage. I mean, often most universities now in Britain have about 25% international students, and there's implications for that is they rely on the finances that come with the international students. So international students are a really important part of the general university picture. But for the graduates, they're not likely to be 18 to 21 years old. They're more likely to be 21 plus, and they may be substantially older. So the thing for us is to have volunteer teams that from local churches who are a bit like aunties and uncles, or they're just a bit older and more experienced. They've probably got a car and they can get you around a bit, or they might be able to welcome you into their home. So the fact that most international students are slightly older than the British undergraduates, or substantially older, and therefore, we can build volunteer teams that are more able to relate to the older student that comes in, and that's quite a substantial part of what we're trying to do.
But even that right there, I wouldn't have thought that. I would have thought a student is a student. Students are generally speaking 18 to 21, maybe 23 if they've done a gap year or something. That's mine. But I mean, that's why I don't do your job. But even that really simple thing, I love every day is a school day. I always quote that. But it's important to understand not just, okay, we've got some students, they're 18 and well, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, but maybe not.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, the international students who come from language school might be 16, 17, 18. They might from a European country, one of the bigger European countries, which is quite secular. They may not hear the gospel in their place. So we like to reach out to international language students. That's another thing. Well, they may not be here very long. You need to run a summer program that's pretty effective at putting things on quickly and telling people all about the opportunities. But the masters and PhD students are likely to be here for a year, 2 year, 3 years or more. And we also see people coming over. There's contracts between different universities and British abroad and British universities where there might be a whole group of teacher trainers or managers of university faculties. So there's the post start, the post PhD, postdoctoral, and the administrators. There's quite a lot of people that come from very, very interesting places. They've got great influence where they are. They have to be in the UK for a certain course, maybe a month or 3 months or something. And we want to show them that there's different ways of seeing life, and that there's Christians who care for them, and there's a message from Jesus that's relevant to their lives. So yeah, we try and find the people who are coming to the UK, and they may be of any sort of age or stage and career path or career stage. So we want to be available, and we just try and be sensitive to where people are coming. And different universities and different and cities will have contracts with different countries. So you do get a whole lot of Kazakhs coming to Reading for 6 months or something, or you get different people. And we know through the university, the Higher Education Statistics Agency, we know which nationalities are coming to which places. So we know where there's more Chinese, more Indian, more Nigerian. If you've got a particular concentration of Georgian students in your city, you might be able to reach out in particular ways that are appropriate and look for them. And often they'll gather in the university and the form a university society. So there's ways of doing the stuff that helps people feel welcome, specifically from where they're from. But then most of what we run is in English, apart from that we can do some Chinese Bible studies, but mainly we want to help people mix, and they're coming across from their culture. They're learning in English together. We're sharing our programs in English, and it's a tremendous bringing together of people from all around the world.
But like you say, it is quite unique. You can take all these different nations of the world. You're thinking, why even are they together? I had a lady in the church, so she was from the Caribbean originally, and very, very much first generation. And yet I sort of see her as a grandma because I'd be in
Yeah.
her house and she make me food, and you've got that amazing relationship there. But that's just replicated, and I do like. I do like different cultures coming together, but as you say,
Hmm.
it's only really the Christian faith that's going to bring different nationalities, different cultures, different colors of skin in such a way that I can't actually think of anything else that could do that.
I think other groups are trying, and there will be a certain amount, but it will be distinctive. I think the
Mm.
generosity and the friendliness, and Christians want to be able to show that, and I think we can. We've got a tremendous message,
Yeah.
and the Holy Spirit is helping us to be different. So we can confidently, I think, welcome from all sorts of places. And there's going to be challenges. I mean, we have, I talk about Ukrainians and Russians coming together. That's wonderful, but there will be some tension sometimes in different
Mm.
groups, different political, people might come as a group and want to represent their country. And if your country is at war with another country or finding things difficult with neighbors, there can be tense points. So we have to, we go carefully, and we try and agree a basis on which we're going to, learn about stuff that's about here. We'll ask people to present about their own country, but we want lots of different people to do that as well. And we want to, help people mutual understanding across cultures, respecting cultures and learning from different cultures. So there's lots to gain.
There really is, but a little bit of applied wisdom can go quite a long way. Let's come back to Friends International then. You've talked about this, a million students kind of transiting through the UK, maybe a month, maybe 3 years, what have you. How does Friends International function then? I mean, how do you find a church, or how do they find you in order that you can support them? And what is it you're actually doing in order to support that church or that group?
So we know the numbers, as we said, from the Higher Education Stats Agency. So we know where the international students are in universities at least, and we know where some of the language students are as well. So our starting point is to say, well, our aim is to reach international students and to help churches reach international students. Where are they? Have we got people? Do we know what's going on? So we'll do some research. We'll go and speak to church leaders, look out for the Christian unions and other student groups, and try and work out, would you like a staff member in your city? Because the staff member can be training, intercultural Bible studies, and the focus, the time, the energy to put into organizing groups and showing people how to organize groups. So it'll be about, does that place want a staff member? And if it does, then we need to look for the financing and the prayer backing to make that possible. So churches will pile in and start giving regularly. The appointed staff member, which will be appointed in partnership. We set up a little group called a development group, which becomes what we call a branch. and then the staff from Friends International and the local group will together appoint a local staff member, and it goes from there. But it does need the locally raising of finances, which is tremendously liberating. And there's not a fixed budget, but you do have to go and look for it. So there's often, well, I was commenting to somebody earlier that sometimes we have trusts or churches that want to give, and we put aside money for that place. And so we have the money ready for the staff member to arrive, and then we may or may not be very quick at finding the right staff member for the using of the resources. And then other times we've got the desire to have a staff member. We know who we want to appoint. We make a great appointment. They're really wonderful people, and the resources aren't necessarily there at the appropriate point. So it's a bit of putting together resources and people. But ideally, it's organic because we can allocate people and then look for the resources for the right place to, and then the staff members appointed are encouragers, they're trainers, they're vision builders, they're boots on the ground and hard workers as well, setting up little cafes. The most typical thing that our staff will do with their church colleagues and partners is to set up something like, let's say, a Friday night, 7:30. This is the International Cafe. Come, and there'll be snacks available. And there'll be then a presentation, and it could be something about British culture, or it could be something about one of the cultures represented. Come and find out. And then there's an optional Bible study. It might be on the same evening, or it might be referred to later. We always want to be very clear: is this purely a social event? Is it something with Christian content? And then out of the event, there'll be invitations. We're going for a walk tomorrow. Who wants to come with us? Spend some time. Some of us will be going to church on Sunday. Let's meet at a certain place, and we'll go together to church. So there's a whole lot of things spin out. But it'll probably start with a social interaction. Come and meet British people, come and meet others from other countries, come and learn about the UK, and off we go.
And I think I like that. But I think it's easy to think, well, how can we do this? What are we going to do? But you've got somebody who's able to focus. I'm guessing multiple churches, therefore, then can actually feed into that, which means not just finance, but press support, but also people, cars.
Volunteers, very much.
We used to run an 18 plus group, and it was 18 plus because we had lots of older folk. Essentially, they're not students, like, late 20s. That's quite old for university in terms of British students. But that's why it's an 18 plus group. But there were 3 or 4 of us who would lead the group with cars. Why is that important? Because, well, the student places in Wolverhampton was very, very widely spread. So you never know where they're going to live. Some of the female students is like, right, you're not walking back to your place. Let us drive you there because it's safer. And that's just exercising a little bit of sense and care and compassion. But what I liked was the fact they wanted to come. And it was the friendship, and we had lots of biscuits, or we had a deep fat fryer and made chips every week, and that's fine. But actually, I think it was a company of people. And when you looked around the room at the people we had, sometimes 20 odd students, and you're thinking, like you said, why are they gathered together? They're such different backgrounds. That's a very, very rich background. That person's come from poverty, and why would they be in the same room talking, chatting, relaxing, and socializing, which is, I guess, a key component that would be difficult to replicate else.
Yeah.
But it's because of this love of Jesus or seeking after it. But that simple invitation and being honest about it, this is a walk, this is a Bible study. We don't need to trick people into the kingdom.
No, absolutely not. They'll be attracted in, and God will be at work by His Holy Spirit in their hearts. And I heard it once said, in terms of what priorities are for Christians, in terms of hospitality, particularly for internationals, I heard it said that there are 3, and only 3, love commands in the Old Testament. The first one is to love the Lord your God, etc. The other is love your neighbor as yourself. And the third one is to love the foreigner among you. So that in Britain today, and in straitened times and challenges for migration all over the world, we are needing as Christians to think that one through, that we are encouraged. Somebody comes new to our country, they don't know what and the students is very structured. They know why they're here, how long they're going to be here, what they're going to be doing. But the ability to welcome the foreigner amongst us is, I think, a big challenge, but a great opportunity.
I often say this: you can either see an obstacle as something that stops you, or something to get past or learn from or get around. And I have always tried, not necessarily immediately, I've always tried to see any obstacle as an opportunity to learn something new or to find a better way of doing it. We can't do that. What can we do instead? Oh, hey, we can do this, which we would never have considered had we just been able to, amble along the path and keep going. But when you come to that brick wall, okay, we need a new path. And sometimes those new paths, they can be very exciting, and it can introduce to all sorts of cultures and peoples.
Yeah. Absolutely. We learn so much. And I think that's true for our volunteers and for our staff, is that we know we're on a learning path. We're offering something. There's certain things we can offer because we're established in a country. We know something of what's around us. We feel for those who are just arriving without necessarily the infrastructure or the personal confidence, because they're out of their own culture and background and base, and we can just offer something. Then we find that we learn. I mean, so many, we grew, we learned, we were so happy to meet our new friends. So yeah, there's great, and it's us helping churches. Churches have all got priorities. Some churches will be near to international student hostels or campuses where they study, and it just makes a lot of sense, and we can help to get that on the road. Others will be a bit further away, and students don't naturally go to the church. It's not about hosting something, but it may well be about volunteers who can give something, and it's certainly financially. We really value churches getting behind us and helping things happen locally. It's really helping churches do a sort of mission that they probably want to do anyway. When you know about how many international students are in your city or town, you may well want to be contributing financially, and that's really helps us get stuff done.
How long now has Friends International been operating in its current method?
Uh, We this year, I've got this is something we put up for prayer. 40 years would and 40 anniversary prayers. So the foundation was as International Student Christian Services. There was a name change in 2002. So there's 40 years formally, but we've already celebrated the 50th anniversary of some places in Bournemouth and Cambridge and elsewhere. They've been going longer than the 40 years. Guildford too. So it's if you look back in the history, and there's something on the front page of our website is a timeline. There's stuff going on by John Stott in London shortly after the Second World War. There's other stuff, there's an international student vision for some churches for quite a long time. But our history is essentially 40 years.
I like history. I'm rubbish at history, by the way. Don't ask me what happened 10 years ago. I don't know. But I like learning about it. And I think that's got to count for something.
Well, the timeline is on the front page of friendsinternational.uk, which is our website, and there's lots of other stuff there, videos of testimonies from the anniversary, and all sorts of good stuff. So please let people have a look at that.
Question I wouldn't ordinarily ask. On the difficult days, on the challenging days, when you're thinking, I just want to go back to bed, what makes you, what's the passion that drives you to keep going through the tiredness or the frustration or the disappointments? What is it that keeps you wanting to press on with what you do?
Reaching international students in the UK is possibly the most strategic ministry on the planet, because more international students per head, compared with the size of the country, and come to the UK than many other places, and more international leaders, presidents, prime ministers, and monarchs have done part of their education in the UK than any other country on the planet. We think there's 50 current global leaders of some sort, or the other, who have studied in the UK at some point. So it's highly strategic. I can get excited about that. I can get excited about the other, just the basic friendships made, that one cup of tea that helps somebody just restore a bit of hope, see how to make the best of their time in the UK. So at the highly strategic level and at the basic humanitarian, compassionate hospitality level, either of those can get me out of bed, even on a bad day.
I love that. I don't often ask that question, but sometimes I just think, what keeps you going? I've
Yeah,
spoken to folk who've got a really good job. It's like I get paid well, and but everybody has a bad day. It doesn't matter whether you're getting paid or you're volunteering.
yeah,
And sometimes I think it's just worth teasing that out. So what
sure.
drives you? Because every one of us wants a duvet day. Let's be honest. It doesn't matter who you are, but knowing what it is that drives you to keep going comes from wisdom and maturity, I guess, to some extent, and experience. Not making any references to the amount of wisdom you have, but
Or grey hair. Yeah.
no, I'm saying nothing. But it does help for us to keep going. And
Yeah.
I guess coming back to the original, why did I start this?
Yeah, I think strategic and reachable. That's the combination. There's a lot of stuff in the middle where we work hard and we put together programs and training, and there's some quite, we have lots of experts, knowledgeable people within Friends International can help you reach out to, say, your Indian background students, African background students, whatever. But it's the headlines are highly strategic, and the bottom line is absolutely doable with a cup of tea. So between those two, we learn a lot, and we find that God's at work. We got lovely stories of people who've gone on to be government ministers in their country where they came from, etc., etc. But I think most people can you reach in somewhere in between that. Is it the cup of tea? the manageability, or is it the eventual possible conclusion that somebody goes on to be a government minister in their own country and they know Jesus, so they are making a difference for Jesus at a highly strategic level?
I guess, hey, look, if you're British, if you've got any kind of British culture, having a cup of tea is just, it's what we do. And we know medically it's good. It's actually got good health reasons why it's good to take a pause after a car crash or hospital trip. Have a cup of tea. Why? It actually helps, because it not just loosens the mouth, it actually loosens the soul and the heart just a little bit. And some great stories. I've just been reading about street angels who work on in the Saturday night economy.
Right.
And one of the things they found is that cup of tea, that cup of coffee at 2:00 in the morning, and listening, suddenly somebody's pouring a heart out who would never talk to anybody else.
Yes, the cup of tea is the context for the listening. I think that the tea in itself, we can develop a theology on that, but it's the time with people. It's the context to allow conversation and knowing they've been given something and you've done something together, made a cup of tea together, and then it's the conversation and the listening that shows care and Christian compassion. Yeah.
You've spoken of, a group of churches want to help students in this area. So you've talked about that. But if a church has suddenly discovered they've got an international hostel that's just opened down the road, how would you help them on the journey towards reaching other churches, perhaps in the area, and realizing, not just we've got international students on the doorstep, literally, but what we can do? How would you help the beginning of that conversation?
Well, we'd want our staff. We have regional development directors, my 4 colleagues around the country, and others more locally, but they would want to meet with the people from that church. I'd encourage the church to pull together a leaders meeting and perhaps a wider meeting, church members meeting, and then just look at what's there. So how far away are these people? Can we find out where they're from? Yes, we can. What do they need? They might need all sorts of help to settle in. And then what can we offer? Have we got a church hall? Do we like making cups of tea? Can we put on a program that's welcoming? How are we going to advertise that? And then, work out what other churches are doing around and how you can do that together and with the Christian unions and others in the university itself. So I would think there's a fairly simple but straightforward way to open up what's appropriate for us as a church. What have we got? Have we got more money or more people or a premises? How can we use our resources? If we don't feel we've got a lot of any of that, we're going to pray anyway. So we'll help you pray. But I think we could probably look to setting up or strengthening some other meeting that's already happening with either volunteers or financial resources or a premises.
Just as a joyous for close, I was very much reminded as you were speaking of the boy with the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. We all have something we can bring.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe it's not even one person with the 5 loaves and the fishes. Maybe I've got a basket, you got a fish. I've got an oven with some bread. I don't know.
Very much.
But when we share those resources, and that's where that account from Scripture came to mind. It's amazing what can happen because, like you said, well, maybe we haven't got a premises, but we have got a whole bunch of older folk who love making tea. Great. There's a resource that is absolutely precious,
very, very helpful,
valuable. Who doesn't like a grandma? Everybody loves the granny making you a cup of tea.
There we go. No, I'm sure that's true. And so we would love to put people in touch with the appropriate local person to perhaps discover what's already going on. And if not, think about what could we do that would be relevant to add into the picture. And so, the website is friendsinternational.uk, and there's a phone number on there for our support centre, or email us and we can see how to put you in touch with the right people that can help you connect and start something up.
Fabulous. So whether you've already got students in your area or you're thinking, have we got students in our area, reach out to Friends International and they'll help and guide you through. Just give us that website just one more time. It's
Friends International, all one word, no punctuation things, .uk. That's our basic website. But you'd find us in all sorts of places. Friends International would love to see how we can help you get some international student ministry moving or increasing.
Thank you. Alan, I've loved this. I met my wife at university. University is a wonderful place to think of life happening, learning, all that sort of stuff. But friendsinternational.uk if you want to find out more and connect with folk in your local area. Alan, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be with you.
Rated 5 stars by Sorted Magazine's film critic, Pure 247 takes you behind the scenes of the birth of a global Christian radio station. Andy B will have you laughing and crying as you discover what it takes to create ministry that matters in this inspiring tale of perseverance, honesty, and vulnerability. Buckle up and get ready for a story that's uplifting as it is entertaining. Behind the microphone, they faced bankruptcy, eviction, and 2 life-changing surgeries. Can they make it? Will they make it? Get your copy of this life-changing book today. Pure 247 is available now on Amazon. Andy B is best described as a man after God's own heart, who insists that God's vision and resourcing trump all handicaps.